notice how two guitar players can plug into the same rig, same guitar, same amp, same pedals, even the same friggin' cable, and somehow sound like two totally different worlds? That's the psychology of guitar tone, my friends. And it's not some mystical mojo. It's a reality that we all brush up against every time we pick up our instrument. Here's the deal. Tone isn't just in the gear. It's in the grip, the touch, the headspace, even the way you breathe when you play. You can hand a Les Paul through a plexi stack to Edward Van Halen, and it's gonna roar like Edward. You give him the same setup to your buddy down the street, and it might sound like a garage band covering Smoke on the Water for the 12th time. Here's the kicker. It's not just physical technique. Tone is psychological. If you walk on stage nervous, uptight, unsure, you will sound nervous, uptight, and unsure. If you walk up confident, relaxed, in the pocket, suddenly every bend sings, every riff breathes, and every note connects. That's the hidden EQ nobody talks about. Forget treble, mids, and bass. Your attitude dials in your tone before you even strum a chord. And that's what we're diving into today. How the same gear changes when the player changes. Why your state of mind is the biggest effect pedal you'll ever own. And how learning to read yourself as much as your audience can level up your playing faster than buying the next shiny guitar toy. Stick around because at the end I'll prove it. Same guitar, same amp, two completely different sounds, all based on how I approach it. Spoiler alert, it's not magic, it's psychology. Now, it's obvious that the same rig in different hands, it'll never sound the same. And I remember reading a long time ago that Ted Nugent had marveled at the sounds that Edward Van Halen was getting out of his rig, and he asked, "Hey, let me plug into your rig," trying to figure out if the secret sauce was in the rig. And sure enough, when Ted plugged into Edward Van Halen's rig, he just sounded like Ted Nugent playing through Edward Van Halen's rig. We all have a DNA to our playing. We all have our own sound. And it's oftentimes when I'm watching on YouTube, and lately I've seen a lot of younger players appear very nervous when they're playing, and their hands shaking, and that hand shaking is giving them a very unsure, unsteady tone to their playing. So your state of mind, whether you're clean and sober, or whether you're on medication, or whether you had your caffeine or too much of it, what you had for breakfast, where your headspace is at, all of these factors affect your tone. And that's something important to remember. You're never going to sound like somebody else, no matter how much you try. But you can improve how you sound, how you play, and be the best you that you can be. Now, a lot of people think that you can just buy a better pedal or a better guitar or a better amp or buy a quad cortex or something like that and vastly improve your tone. And I often get products sent to my channel, and I got something really cool in the mail the other day from Singular Sound. It's the talent knob. Now, dude, all you need to do is get you this talent knob. You can instantly turn your talent up from 0 to 11, bro. So let's check it out. It says the one thing you need. Singular Sound sent me this pedal. And check it out. It's a giant knob that goes from 0 to 11. 0 to 11. So if you put it on 0, that means you have 0 talent. all of a sudden, if I bring this up, I just increase the talent level, the amazing talent, turning this up, turning it up, all the way up to 11. And instantly, my talent is increased. Now look, there's a disclaimer on the back. Disclaimer, talent not included. Okay, so all this is this curious little box that Singular Sound sent me, and they sent me some other cool products that I will be demoing on the channel. But this is making the point, right? Plug into this, plug out to your amp or your interface or whatever. All this is a volume knob, right? But look, this is no different than a tube screamer. Tube screamer has a volume knob on it. And yes, you can increase the volume and goose your amp up, or you can turn the gain knob up, and you can add more grit to your tone, or you can dial in the tone setting, and you can do all these things. With this, all you can do is turn it from 0 to all the way up. And it's not even a volume boost. This isn't even a clean boost, although I wouldn't blame them if they did make a clean boost version. But this is making a point that you don't need pedals, you don't need boxes. And look, man, there were times in my life where all I owned was one guitar, one cable, and one amplifier. And that's what I would go and play gigs with. And, you know, ultimately, I used that rig until I could afford more and added more and built more so that I could do other things, so that I could get different tones. But no matter what I did by manipulating the tone, ultimately, it always came down to my hands, my head, and my heart. And no pedal changed any of that. No pedal changed who I was. No guitar changed who I was. I was always going to sound like myself no matter what I played through. Now, touch is king. Your pick attack is your fingerprint, right? And what type of pick you use and the way that you pick, the way you attack the strings, that may have a greater effect than anything at all. And look, if you take a tube amp and you crank it up and then play very softly, you're going to get a nice, soft, clean tone. And then when you hit hard and dig in, it's going to overdrive the amp and compress. The power tubes are going to compress. And that is going to show you more than anything that you can get so many different tones just by using dynamics, just by changing your pick attack. So if you want to work on something that improves your tone, work on your touch. Think about how you pick. Think about how you're attacking the strings. Now look, man, being a live player and being a studio player, they're two different things, two different types of attacks. And if you're a live player going into the studio, you might need to change your approach. You might need to hit the strings lighter, not over attack the strings. And if you're a studio player and you're getting thrown up on stage with a bunch of road assassins, you might need to attack and approach the instrument differently in order to, compete with the guys on stage. And, knowing these things, being able to adjust, that's a huge part of this. Being cognizant of what you're doing when you're playing. Notice if you have any weaknesses in your technique. Work on your picking technique or your legato or whatever it is that defines you. But you can always work on it to improve your tone. Now look, I know everybody out there has played gigs when you're nervous or when you're sad or when you're happy or when you're had too much caffeine or you ate too much pizza on the break. And your mood and your body chemistry is the secret knob you didn't know you had. I think it's important that people realize you need to be in a positive headspace to create music. Now, maybe this is a huge reason why musicians tend to have issues with alcohol and other things, because it's very hard to shift gears from driving for an hour to get to a gig and dealing with very aggravating traffic and people potentially, flipping you off and cutting in front of you and really ruining your good mood. And then going to a gig and having to project happiness, try to bring the party, try to bring a smile to people's faces. And I think a lot of musicians resort to having a couple of pops to try to loosen up. But man, it's important to realize that you need to approach the music with the proper headspace, because the proper headspace, being relaxed, being in the moment, having a positive attitude, well, that's only going to help you achieve your goal of having a great night and playing to the best of your ability. Now look, confidence is also a huge thing. If you play scared, you sound scared. If you play bold, you sound bold. And this is important, man. We've all, even seasoned veterans, sometimes find themselves in scary situations. Sometimes you find yourself playing with somebody, no matter how good you are, they could be leaps and bounds over your head. And now you're in a situation where you're playing music that's extremely challenging to what you normally do. It's important, man. Somebody in the chat today in one of my morning premieres said, Jeff Berlin had said that when you're on stage, you just forget all your theory. And I said, look, the difference is this. You have to practice and work on theory and things like that at home till it becomes second nature. You don't want to be thinking too much on the gig. If you have to play a gig where you're constantly thinking about theory and constantly having to analyze things, that's going to fry your brain if you do that for 3 or 4 hours. What you need to be able to do when you get on stage is realize my job is to sound as good as I possibly can. It's not time to make questionable note choices during my solos, during Don't Stop Believin'. It's time to make it sound good. The theory and all that thought and outside playing and all that stuff goes by the wayside when you're playing for a crowd who just wants to hear some nice music. So think about that. Be confident. If you're in over your head, you know what? Realize, hey, this is going to be tough, but I need to be confident. I need to focus on playing stuff that sounds good. I don't need to try and compete with these people who may be playing at another level. And be confident and don't play scared, right? If you play with confidence, if you exude confidence, no matter what situation you're in, you're going to find that you're going to play better. Now look, there is the influence of style, right? And whatever style that you play, it's like different martial arts, right? You have Tai Chi, you have karate, you have judo, you have all these different techniques, right? Different styles, right? And here's the deal. B.B. King and Yngwie could share a rig. It'd still be night and day. You're looking at two extremes two entirely different styles. And if they both had to plug in through the exact same rig and the exact same guitar, BB's still going to play like BB and Yngwie is still going to play like Yngwie. And that's important to realize, man. Your influences and your style is going to come through no matter what gear you play through. Now, audience connection is key. Your energy bounces off the crowd and back into your tone. If your tone is pleasing, if your tone is right for the mood of the event, if you do have a great tone, and I would encourage everybody, even though, ultimately you're going to sound like yourself, you need to sound like the best version of yourself. So of course, I'm not telling anybody not to work on your tone. Work on having the best tone for you. Work on having a tone that speaks to your tone, to your style of playing, right? To your influences, right? So putting out good energy, putting out good tone, and that is going to bounce off the crowd and come back to you, and it's going to become a positive feedback loop of good emotions. Now look, soft versus aggressive, relaxed versus uptight, same gear, different tones. Understand that the way that you feel, the way that you project your emotions and your attack is going to make more difference than all the pedals in the world. The takeaway from all this, tone is in the hands, the head, and the heart. So here's the truth bomb, my fellow tone chasers. You can keep chasing pedals, amps, guitars, and magic cables until your wallet cries for mercy. But if you don't get your head and your hands right, you'll always be disappointed. Tone is a reflection. It's a mirror that shows exactly who you are the moment you hit that string. That's why Edward Van Halen sounded like Edward on a Kramer, on a Wolfgang, or a cheap knockoff, because it was never about the guitar. It was always about Edward. Same goes for Hendrix, SRV, John Mayer, Nuno, you name it. Their tone followed their psychology, not their shopping cart. Think about it. When you're relaxed and connected, suddenly the bends are smoother, the vibrato sings, and your timing locks in like Velcro. When you're stressed out, rushing, or second-guessing yourself, your tone gets thin, sharp, and brittle. That's not the amp. It's your mindset bleeding through your fingertips. That's why I call it the mental mix. Your brain is the producer, your hands are the engineers, and your gear is just the studio. If the producer's off his game, the track falls apart no matter how nice the studio is. So what's the takeaway? Start treating your mind like part of your rig. Warm up your headspace the same way you warm up your fingers. Breathe before you play. Connect with the groove. Trust your instincts and don't let fear choke your sound. You want fat tone? Stop playing timid. You want clarity? Clear your mind before you hit the first chord. You want to connect with the audience? Show them who you are, not what pedals you own. At the end of the day, the psychology of tone is this. Your gear is the paint, but you are the painter. The same brush in Van Gogh's hands paints Starry Night. In mine, it paints a stick figure. The gear doesn't make the art, you do. So next time you plug in, don't just dial your amp, dial yourself. That's where the real tone lives. And with that, I'm going to leave you with one last jam. Same rig, two different mindsets. You tell me which one speaks louder.